Welcome to today's Explainer. We are about to take a pretty wild ride. We're going to dive deep into Earth's terrestrial ecosystems, starting way out with the universal rules that govern nature itself, zooming all the way down into the spectacular biodiversity of India, and finally confronting the urgent, looming crisis that threatens to unravel the whole shebang. So let's jump right in.
Here is our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start with the drivers of ecosystems, then check out global forest biomes, move into India's forest diversity, contrast grasslands with deserts, and finish up with the crisis of desertification.
Kicking things off with Part 1, the drivers of ecosystems, specifically temperature and moisture. Think of temperature and moisture as the ultimate bosses of nature. Honestly, they are the absolute most critical factors that dictate everything on land. Their levels design every single biome on our planet. But what happens when these two drivers hit their absolute most unforgiving limits? Well, you get the tundra. The word tundra literally translates to barren land, and man, it is harsh. It mostly exists in two places: the Arctic tundra, right below the polar ice, and the alpine tundra, way up on the highest mountain peaks. In this bone-chilling setup, plant life is stripped down to tough-as-nails survivors like cotton grass and lichen. And the animals? You'll only find highly specialized creatures like reindeer, muskox, and lemmings braving those sub-zero temps.
And speaking of freezing, it's fascinating to see how different animals actually deal with these extremes. Look at this stark contrast. Warm-blooded creatures like penguins basically wear a built-in winter coat. They rely on a thick layer of fat under their skin, blubber, to lock in body heat and survive the freezing cold. Cold-blooded animals, like reptiles, they have to work completely differently. They can't generate their own internal heat, so they have to manually regulate it. It's like a manual override for survival. They have to constantly move, basking in the sun to warm up, and then hastily retreating to the shade to cool down.
All right, moving to Part 2, global forest biomes and the latitudinal shift.
As we travel geographically from the freezing north down towards the equator, forests change in a very specific, predictable sequence. First up, in the coldest regions, we hit the coniferous and boreal forests. Move a bit further south into the mid-latitudes, and the climate softens up, giving way to temperate forests. Finally, as we hit the equator, where you've got intense heat and heavy rainfall, we're suddenly surrounded by the lush, dense canopies of tropical forests.
But the real magic is happening underground, in the soil. In those freezing boreal forests, the soil, called podzol, is thin, acidic, and super low on minerals because the freezing cold makes leaf decay incredibly slow. Now contrast that with tropical forests. They have this thick, red soil called latticeol. Now, you might assume tropical soil is packed with nutrients, right? Actually, no. The heavy equatorial rains wash most of the nutrients completely away. So how on earth are rainforests so lush? The secret is an extremely fast nutrient cycle. The ecosystem breaks down matter so insanely fast that plants absorb the nutrients before the rain can even wash them away. It is nature's ultimate high-speed recycling program.
Let's bring things a bit closer to home now with Part 3, India's forest diversity, a true global microcosm.
Zooming in on the map, India is an absolute powerhouse of ecological wealth. Just look at this number, 16. According to the Champion and Seth classification, which is the gold standard for forestry here, India alone hosts a staggering 16 distinct forest types right within its borders. That is a massive figure for just one single nation, making it a phenomenal microcosm of global biodiversity.
So what do 16 forest types actually look like on the ground? We are talking about a totally wild spectrum of flora. Down in the south, you've got the deeply green, tropical wet evergreen forests of Kerala, plus the coastal swamp forests of the Andamans. Travel up north and you hit the dry alpine scrubs of the freezing Himalayas. Tropical, subtropical, temperate, alpine, it's all here. You can find everything from jackfruit, teak, and salt trees, all the way up to high-altitude deodar and rhododendrons, all in one country.
But we really have to face a pretty sobering reality check here. On a global scale, India stands proud in the top 10 countries for total forest area, holding about 1.8% of the world's total, according to 2005 FAO data. Sounds great, right? But the domestic reality is a whole different story. Because of our massive population pressure, if you divide that forest area up per person, it drops to a dangerously low 0.08 hectares. That stark little number highlights just how immense the pressure is on our resources and how urgently we need to protect these ecological lifelines. Which brings us to part 4, grasslands versus deserts and the all-important rainfall divide. Nature has this incredibly strict mathematical cutoff line here. We call it the 25-centimeter rule. Basically, if an area gets between 25 and 75 centimeters of rain a year, boom, it's a grassland. That's not quite enough water for a dense forest, but it's plenty to keep the desert away. But the absolute second that rainfall drops below 25 centimeters, the environment crosses a threshold and becomes a desert. Out in those harsh, barren zones, you're only going to find extreme survivors like the cactus and the creosote bush holding on.
Now, looking at India's grasslands specifically, we mostly see two players, steppes and savannas. And the ecological difference between them is huge. In steppes, fodder is only available during a very short rainy season, which makes resources super limited and survival incredibly tough. Savannas, on the other hand, are way more resilient. The grass there grows vigorously during the rains, but here's the kicker. It continues to grow marginally even during droughts. That creates a much, much more sustainable ecosystem.
Okay, shifting gears to part 5, this is the most critical part of today's explainer, the crisis of desertification, a looming threat.
Everything we've talked about so far is currently under a massive unfolding emergency. We need to be very clear about what the villain of our story actually is. Desertification isn't just some sand dunes blowing into a town. No, it is the complete and permanent destruction of a land's biological potential. It's the tragic process where once viable, life-giving soil literally turns into dead desert. This happens particularly in fragile dry and semi-dry ecosystems where the balance is already hanging by a thread. Brace yourselves for this stat. According to the 2007 Desertification Atlas, a staggering 70% of India falls into the highly vulnerable drylands category. Let that sink in for a second. 70%. This is a massive wake-up call. It means the vast majority of the country's landmass is standing right on the edge, where just a little bit of mismanagement could flip fertile ground into barren dust.
And the active damage already taking place? It's honestly shocking. Over 32% of India's total land, we are talking over 105.48 million hectares, is currently facing land degradation. Even worse, over 81 million hectares are actively undergoing desertification as we speak. And why does this matter to us? Because this is a direct, literal threat to our food security and the livelihoods of millions of people who rely on that land just to survive.
Now, it's really tempting to just blame all this on natural climate change or unavoidable droughts, but actually, scratch that. We have to look in the mirror here. This crisis is heavily human-driven. What's pushing this? Immense population pressure, severe overgrazing by livestock, agricultural overexploitation, totally unplanned and rampant construction, and massive deforestation. These are our actions, relentlessly pushing fragile ecosystems right past their breaking point.
But listen, it isn't all doom and gloom. We are fighting back with some serious concrete action. First, as part of the UN Convention to Combat Desertification, India launched a huge national action program in 2001. Second, there's the Green India Mission, which is laser-focused on reviving these degraded ecosystems. And third, large-scale rural employment projects under MGNREGA are actively focusing on vital water harvesting and afforestation at the grassroots level. These are crucial steps to pull our land back from the brink.
Which leaves us with one massive, profound question to wrap up today's explainer. If human actions and unregulated development pushed these ecosystems to the very edge, can our conscious, deliberate actions reverse the damage? Will we be able to restore the harmony we've broken? Or will barren, lifeless land be humanity's final footprint on Earth? That is a challenge that falls on every single one of us to answer. Thank you so much for exploring this with me today. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll catch you in the next one.